So after spending 1 year only with the Leica Q3, the 28mm version, last week I bought the Ricoh GR3X, and I have a lot of thoughts about not a comparison between those two cameras, but the different experience that I've shared with these fixed prime lenses. So in this video, I'm very excited to share this with you. Of course, it's just 1 week with the Ricoh versus the 1 year with the Leica, but there are clear differences and clear pros and cons that I want to share with you. So let's go. First of all, obviously, is the 60 megapixel sensor on the Leica Q3 versus the 24 megapixel of the Ricoh GR3X. I'm sorry if I have some mistakes in the technical terms. I'm not doing a technical review here, only my personal experience. So the 60 megapixel really allows me to crop a lot through my photos, and in the Ricoh 3RGX I find myself that I'm not cropping as much, but because the focal length is more distant, then it feels like I'm already cropping before I'm taking the image. I love the 28 focal length in my street photography, but I find myself, especially in black and white photography, which I started to do more lately, that I crop a lot in my photos. That's one of the reasons why I chose the X version and not the 28mm version. By the way, I'm sorry if this video is not organized by any way. I just want to tell you my thoughts. I didn't plan any of this. I'm just telling you what I'm thinking about those cameras. And the obvious difference between them is, of course, the size. The Ricoh GR3X as well as the Ricoh GR3 is pocketable. I can fit it into any pocket that I have, if it's my jeans or my coat. And this major difference is something that is maybe the game changer here, and what makes me go to the Ricoh so much more on the street than the Leica. Of course, I will get a better result, a better image quality, and a better dynamic range with the Leica, no question about that. But if I'm just walking on the streets, my Leica is in my bag and my Ricoh is in my pocket, and I see something that instantly I want to catch, I will go without thinking to my Ricoh. If I'm going without planning to do any photography and I see something interesting, I will choose my Ricoh. And the fact that I take so many photos with this, I take like 300 photos every time that I go outside of the house. I know it's maybe too much, but it's just so much fun. It's like a game. It's like taking a toy and take it outside, taking a lot of photos and just play with it. I'm not considering the Ricoh a professional camera, although I know a lot of people do a professional job with the Ricoh. There's nothing wrong about that. It's just something that me personally, I take it more as something that practice my skill in photography, something that I do a lot. And it's also really fun to use. You know, the snap focus distance is something that I use a lot. And so I just thought about a lot of cons about this camera that I wish the Ricoh GR4 maybe will have. So the screen behind, it's not that it's not flipping out and it's fixed here. It's sometimes lying, and what I mean by that is when I focus on something and take a photo and I think I see on the screen that it's in focus, then later at home for some reason it's not in focus and something else was in focus. It's like this screen tells you that most of the photo is in focus, and maybe it's just my eyes, I don't know, but comparing to the Leica, I'm not really relate on that screen, and I will buy a viewfinder in Amazon and put it on top. I think it's necessary with the Ricoh after 1 week with it. And also the aperture of 2.8 versus the 1.7 of the Leica is obviously very noticeable, especially in portraits or something that I do in macro mode that I have here. And I think that the difference is really noticeable even if you don't compare them side by side. So that's something to keep in mind. Another major difference that I noticed the last year using the Leica is that 95% of the time I edit the photos later in Lightroom, even if I use the JPEG format and not the RAW files. I shoot JPEG plus RAW always, both in the Ricoh and the Leica, to maintain the color if I want to use it later. I always do that. And with the Leica I found myself editing a lot more. Maybe it's because of the dynamic range that allows me to edit a lot and get exactly the result that I want. And with the Ricoh, it's not just the high contrast, which is, we have an extremely high contrast black and white here, which is beautiful. I really love the JPEG files that come out of this camera. I can edit the RAW file inside the camera and change the film simulation inside, so that's really nice. There are a lot of cool styles and really beautiful styles in this camera that I love, and if I use those styles, I barely edit the photo. It barely gets into Lightroom, and if it does, it just to straight the photo and fix general, exposure and stuff like that. But most of the time I use the JPEG as is. Maybe that's because I take a lot of photos with the Ricoh, so edit 300 photos every day, it's not possible. But I really love the film simulation that comes with the Ricoh. I really love the colors, especially the blue one. I think it has some certain feeling and vibe about it that I love. I'm not going to get into the obvious changes between the cameras. The lens so much sharper and the Leica, I don't want to make this a comparison. It's just my feeling here, but it is something that I really noticed when I take a photo with my Leica. And I think that if I put a photo on the screen, then most people, if they not watch it on the small screen of the phone, if they watch it on a big one, they will see the difference immediately in most photos, especially at aperture 1.7 versus 2.8. And it's just much more, of course, a professional feeling camera. It's much more robust, and maybe that's also a con, because when I'm walking in the street with my Leica, I can't hide, and it's really noticeable. Although it's a small camera comparing to other DSLR or mirrorless cameras, but when I go with my Ricoh, it's just more like a tourist, and I don't feel like I feel like I'm taking a lot more portraits with the Ricoh. It's something that I really try to avoid in the past with my Leica. I'm not feeling comfortable going into people's face and take portrait, and maybe just from far away and then crop. But with the Ricoh, I found myself going and just feeling invisible on the street. And I took some really nice portraits, although it's not my type and style that I like shooting. But it's nice to experiment with other things. And I just remember maybe the biggest con of the Ricoh, and that's shooting at night in dark places. The results of the Ricoh at night is not very good, and I will think twice about opening the camera in dark places. It's not using the light very well on this sensor. I'm not sure why, because I shot before with a Canon with the same size of the sensor, and the image quality was much better. But yeah, maybe the fourth version they could bring back the flash, which I love shooting, and I really miss it both in the Leica and the Ricoh. Maybe I will buy the external one, but obviously I'm not shooting a video with this thing. I'm not even trying, and I think I'm going to cover the microphone here, so no extra dust came into this camera. I've heard a lot about the dust issues of the Ricoh, and I don't experiment it now. I had the Ricoh GR3, the 28mm version, and I didn't experiment it then. So tell me what you think about both of those cameras. Of course, they have a lot of things in common, but they're completely different. If you're looking for the best image quality, it goes without saying that the Leica is, of course, the winner. And if you're looking for something pocketable, then the Ricoh is something else and completely pocketable versus the Leica. But the Ricoh is really complementing the Leica, in my opinion, and I think I'm really happy that I bought this camera. It has a different feeling to it, a different thing that they do with it in my photography. I'm more practiced with it and more enjoy playing with this versus taking professional serious photos that I would happy more to share later. I think I chose the worst place today to do the video. A lot of noise behind me. I hope you can hear me well. But anyway, tell me in the comments what you think of them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.